Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Top Rope Takes. It is Tuesday, December 10th, and we are just a couple days away from the return of Saturday night's main event. I'm Jason Marcus alongside my partner here, Willie Thrill. Will, how's it going, man?
It's going great. This is definitely our first time taking this, so this is wonderful. Everything goes smoothly here at Top Rope Takes, and I'm
Yes.
just happy to talk about some wrestling. We had an interesting Raw. Obviously, Raw was amazing last week, so it's going to be tough to kind of match that energy. But they
Mhm.
did carry on some storylines that I'm definitely interested in talking about. And of course, we have Saturday night's main event coming this Saturday, and we will have a predictions video coming out tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. But Jason,
Yes.
let's talk about Raw.
Let's talk about Raw. So last week, you kind of already mentioned it, Will. Last week, we had the New Day officially breaking up. It was a landmark episode. There's something that stood out in that show is obviously like something that people are going to remember. I don't think there's anything from this episode that people are going to really be remembering. It was very much a transitional episode. But listen, there's one every week. You're gonna get have a handful of these throughout the calendar year. But we're still going to talk about it because that is our commitment to you, fans out there, to cover all wrestling, whether it's historic or not. So let's talk about, I guess, the big headline from this episode. I would say is really the World Heavyweight Championship is the really biggest development. We came into this episode knowing that Gunther was going to be defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Finn Balor at Saturday night's main event. But tonight on this week's episode of Raw, we add Damian Priest to the mix now, and it is now officially a triple threat. I want to get your thoughts on what we saw here on Raw. We saw Finn Balor cut a couple promos, attack Damian Priest and Gunther. And what are your thoughts on Damian Priest now being added to this matchup? Does it change anything for you? We'll give it our official predictions at another video, of course, but just your overall thoughts on this whole world title program.
Yeah, this whole world title picture does feel like it's kind of playing second fiddle to the stuff that we saw later in Raw, where it comes to Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Sami
Yeah.
Zayn. That feels more like a main event scene than this current world heavyweight title picture. I am glad that during the segment, Gunther threw in why or reiterated why Finn Balor's getting the shot. It's not because he's necessarily earned it, it's because he claims that he's the reason why Gunther is still champion. Gunther
Mm-hmm.
wants to prove that he didn't need Finn Balor's help. And I do think Damian Priest does make the match itself more interesting. Like I think Gunther and Finn
Yes.
Balor was just going to be a weird dynamic. I think Gunther's just better as a straight up heel, and I think he could play into that more in this kind of match than he would have been able to against Finn Balor,
Mm-hmm.
who is definitely a heel. So adding Priest, I did like that addition. It doesn't change what I think is going to happen at Saturday Night's main event, but I am more excited for this. And this was really the only thing that kind of pushed forward something on Raw because this is like besides the women's world heavyweight championship match, this is like the only other thing on Raw that's going to be on Saturday night's main event. So yeah, I think it's a good move, but not necessarily making me excited for the overall story or world heavyweight title picture at this moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think adding Damian Priest, the match is going to be great. Triple threats are generally pretty awesome. And like you said, I think having the clear babyface added to the match helps a lot because, like, I agree with you. Gunther's better as the heel.
Bless
Excuse
you.
me. Thank you. I think Gunther's better as the heel, and to have that kind of clear dynamic, I think helps everybody involved. The only concern I have in this match, and I won't say who I think is going to win, but I don't know how Finn Balor can continue to stack up losses, um, because his character is so middling. Like he hasn't ever done anything relevant on the main roster. Like in my opinion, like for what we're going on 8 years, and really, what does he have to show for it? Maybe a couple IC title runs. Like the Judgment Day is certainly his biggest thing. I don't necessarily know if he's going to win the world title, but I think like him eating the fall here is going to be really detrimental. So I don't really know how you book him if it's not winning the world title. To be honest.
Yeah, I am curious to see if it's like a case where he either him or Priest like has the match won and Gunther kind of shoves him out of the way. We'll
Yeah.
talk more about it in the predictions video. But I do think as far as Finn Balor is concerned, he is I think he might be in the same lane as Shinsuke in a way,
Yeah.
where like I think they need to do like a big repackaging of him
Yeah, he needs
and
a
then
samurai
bring
gimmick.
him back. Or something, just a new gimmick, like
Yeah.
and bring back the demon. I don't know, but something that will give him like a new, fresh coat of paint and get him out there, and people will see him in a new light because he does have the talent. He just in this current Judgment Day
Mhm.
storyline that he's been a part of for now like 2 years, it's just not working
Yeah.
at
Yep.
all.
And the other thing I wanted to mention when it comes to Finn is they're very clearly setting up a turn on well with a program with him and Dominic Mysterio, and which is interesting because I think Dominic Mysterio is going to be the face in that. What are your thoughts on this potential program with him and Dom, and with Dom being the one being cheered?
That's so interesting to me that you see it that way because I do. I mean, I could see that happening, but I'm just so curious because of how much heat he's used to
Yeah,
getting over these past few years. I am curious to see how they pull that off. Like, what's the angle they take to make Dom a face? I think I think you're right that there is going to be a sort of dissension between Judgment Day, which is long overdue. Like I even
yeah,
this new Judgment Day, I'm kind of just like, let's move past this. Let's split
yeah,
them up. I would rather honestly it just be a case where like they both get separated to different brands and they don't necessarily have a blow off match, but they stay heel on both
yeah.
sides. And that's how you kind of break them up. I wouldn't mind that because there doesn't need to be a heel versus heel match, or I don't think either one of them benefits from turning face right now.
Mhm.
Um, but it would be interesting for sure if they decide to make Dom a baby face, because then I think you could do a really interesting storyline if you want to with him and Ray
Yeah,
maybe reuniting, similar to like an Uso storyline of them uniting, where it's like it's still family. But
right. Well, last week when Dom faced Gunther, he was getting pretty heavily cheered over Gunther. And for a couple weeks now, Finn has been telling Dom like, watch how it's done. I'm gonna get the job done. I'm gonna, beat up Gunther and Damian Priest. And then this week on Raw, Finn had the one line of like last week, Dominic didn't deserve to fight you, and I'm deserving of this world championship. So it's definitely they're not being very subtle about it. It's definitely coming. So I think that's interesting. I think Dom's one of the bigger stars on the card, to be honest, as far as his reactions go. So I'm here for it. I definitely think Dom's better as a heel, but I also think Finn's better as a face, to be honest. Like I think his heel run is so lame, because all he does is lose. So not the dynamic I would go with, but certainly looks like that's the direction we're going.
I will say because I think Finn also got cheered last week when he came out and attacked Gunther. I think it's more of a indictment on how great Gunther is as a heel than like,
Mhm.
oh, Dom is a great potential face or whatever. I think
Right,
it's Gunther being a great heel on top of Dom basically doing Ray's moves. And like I feel
right,
like it's like a Pavlovian response when you see all this crazy high
Mhm.
flying lucha stuff. You're like, oh yeah, like this is awesome. But like
Yeah,
I feel like if you could get Dom being Dom on the mic, everyone will instantly turn on him again.
yeah,
So I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm curious to see the character aspect of him turning because I definitely know he could be a babyface in the ring.
right.
But yeah, we'll have to see. Or they go, like you said, if Finn needs a fresh coat of paint, maybe him as a face will turn things around. So we'll
So
see.
either way, Saturday night's main event is now a triple threat for the World Heavyweight Championship. But we got some other action in the main event scene. You kind of alluded to it already. We had an interview with CM Punk and Jackie Redmond talking about CM Punk's desire to be in the main event of WrestleMania, but more importantly, the focus on his issue with Seth Rollins. Punk basically says, I don't have an issue with the Rollins. I'm not sure why he has an issue with me. And then we get some backstory there about Seth Rollins reaching out to CM Punk to get into the wrestling business and some training and give us some character development, some backstory there. What are your thoughts on everything that we saw from this episode of Raw between Punk and Rollins, and where do you think this match is happening?
So I do think they are tabling the Punk Roman stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like after a few weeks, they're definitely gearing to the direction of Punk Rollins at Mania, which
Mm-hmm.
does make things interesting. And I'm curious to see what plays out in 2025. Uh, I do have some ideas, but I think we'll have to see what happens at Saturday night's main event in the next week or so,
Yeah.
leading into the Rumble. But As far as this segment goes, I did love the sit down interview. First off, Jackie Reitman, what a savage going after the Blackhawks. When it was like, don't bring up the Blackhawks. She's like, no, 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 we'll talk about something more relevant. I was like, okay,
Yeah,
Jackie, like get in there. I thought that was fun.
get in
Um,
there.
and Punk had some great backstory too. I like that he was mentioning like 16-year-old Seth Rollins asked him to train him for free, and he like emphasizes that like for free, like if he's gonna donate his time, you might want to pay a little something. Probably, I bet
Yeah,
Seth Rollins probably didn't have any money at the time, but I can understand where both sides are coming from in that sense.
yeah.
And I do like the line where he said, "You were on the top 10 list of being fired before I shielded you from
Mm,
that." That's a little wink, wink to him creating the shield, even though Triple H took credit for it.
right.
Uh, I enjoyed the sit down interview. I think it made Punk feel real. I think Jackie did a great job as well, and I think it set up what came up later with Rollins and Sammy in the ring.
Yeah, I think Sami Zayn's involvement in all this is kind of weird. It doesn't really feel like he fits. Honestly, I was kind of surprised to see his involvement with the Bloodline storyline kind of just end so abruptly. Thought maybe there'd be more layers to that, and maybe there still will be in the future. But right now, this kind of just feels like Sammy's involved in this because there's just nothing else for him that logically to do. Um, this just feels like a very much like a CM Punk Seth Rollins thing, and Sami Zayn is kind of just there. It's a weird dynamic to me.
I think there is a purpose for Sami Zayn being in there. I think like maybe on the surface it seems like why is Sami Zayn involving himself in all this stuff? But I think what I love about this new WWE, especially like recently when Roman had come back and there started being interesting dynamics amongst characters who had interactions with the tribal chief Roman Reigns and his, 1,316 day long reign. Like I do believe that there is going to be a payoff to this as far as Sami Zayn still tying himself with members of the bloodline
Mm-hmm.
and now he's tied himself with CM Punk as kind of like collateral in all this.
Mm-hmm.
And his eventual run in with guys like Seth Rollins, who clearly has a problem with the bloodline and CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, who's had a problem with the bloodline and CM Punk. And ultimately, what I think is going to happen, it's going to lead to the main culprit of guy who hates the bloodline and CM Punk, which is Kevin Owens.
Oh, got
So
it.
I think that's what they're kind of building up to, and they're kind of just using his storyline with Drew McIntyre currently to
Mm-hmm.
kind of be like a conduit, I guess,
Yeah.
of just like these are the people who Sami Zayn has kind of rubbed off on the wrong or got on the wrong foot with because for his alliance with the bloodline and CM Punk, even though he's clearly not like fully cool with the bloodline and CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
He just, he's close with Jay. He was able to team up with Roman for the greater cause of taking down the new bloodline. And because of all this, he had to align himself with Paul Heyman, who brought
Right.
in CM Punk. And he wouldn't have had it that way, but it just is what it is. And now he's gone to war with him. And this is just where he stands. And I do like Sami Zayn kind of setting up Seth Rollins for that heel turn that we might see in a few weeks, where he's like, this whole CM Punk thing brings the worst out. I just want to let you
Yeah.
know that personally. But I know it's probably none of my business. So from now on, you deal with it how you want to deal with it. And I'm just going to stay out of it. I thought that
Yeah.
was great stuff. And I do like the slow burn Seth Rollins turn. It kind of reminds me, ironically, of CM Punk when he
Mm.
feuded with Jeff Hardy back in 2009 when he won the title and he felt like he was in the right, but the crowd did not feel that way. And over the few weeks, you started to see him kind of descend into this heelish manner, and
Is Seth
it
is
will then play into a full blown heel turn at some point.
so is Seth Rollins going to shave his head?
Uh, maybe he'll put the hair on the line. You never know.
You
I
never
know that,
know.
but yeah, that came way later down that was like a
Uh,
year out from that. But I do think Seth will have that moment where he fully turns, and
mm.
it will probably be in that match that he has with Gunther for the world heavyweight title.
Very interesting. I love how much thought you like, how much like foresight you see into everything. Um, I, you know, so rumors are that this match is happening at the Netflix debut show in January. Whether that's not been confirmed, but that is just pure speculation. If that is the case, I don't see this being a clean finish. I think there will be a PLE version of this and multiple, most likely, after the fact. But I agree with you. I like the slow burn. I like that there's layers to this storyline. Where does Drew McIntyre fit into all this? Because he's got a match now officially against Sami Zayn at Saturday night's main event. So he's obviously got history with Punk and Rollins. So these four guys are all kind of doing a dance. Or what do you think about Drew's involvement in this story so far?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because that did just remind me that because I was like there I think there's another Raw match, but I'm probably blanking
Mm,
on it. Yes, Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre for Saturday night's main event. I don't think it's going to be the end of Sami Zayn and Drew McIntyre. I
no,
think we're just getting started. So I think that's going to be his storyline for a bit. As far as where Drew McIntyre goes after Sami Zayn, it's interesting because I don't think you want him back with Punk. If he like, do you put him? I don't know if you put him with against Gunther.
I think it's coming.
And
I,
maybe
I
if he has the title, then I may make sense. But as a separate feud without the title, I'm not sure.
mhm.
Uh, I mean the one I want to see, and I'll stand by it, is him and Wade Barrett at some
Yeah,
point going at that would just be awesome. I don't know how they get there, but at this they kind of teased it earlier in the year.
yeah.
Um, so that
We
would be
need.
my personal pick, but I'm open to. I think Drew after the Sammy stuff is kind of open to whatever.
Mm,
I heard speculation on like a few people's podcast where they were saying that maybe Seth forms like this group that just is anti uh bloodline CM Punk, and it's with those guys who have like a strong hatred in their own side of the story, which is Seth, Drew, and Kevin Owens, which I
oh,
think would
interesting.
be a very interesting, like
Like
top level
vigilantes.
faction.
Yeah,
Kind of just like, yeah, like the, you know, anti superstar kind of group that they don't like Cody, they don't like the bloodline, and they
yeah.
don't like CM Punk. And that's kind of like, that's your contingents. Those are your three top heels to go after your superstars. I think it would be interesting.
I mean, the three of them are all playing very similar characters at the moment, so it does make sense. I wouldn't hate that. I think it would be a pretty interesting dynamic, and not something that would last forever, obviously, but I'd be here for that. All right, so we have that match official for Saturday night's main event, the Punk Rollins stuff slow burning. We will see where that goes next week. We also had the match on the card. It was the main event. It was Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez in a anything goes match. We also had earlier in the night Liv Morgan defeat Dakota Kai in a one-on-one match. Liv Morgan will be defending her Women's World Championship against Io Sky at Saturday night's main event. And we saw this match in this week's episode of Raw. Rhea Ripley and Io Sky kind of tease that they're both going after the world title. Rhea Ripley picks up a big win in the main event when she hits the Riptide on Raquel through a table. So Liv defending the title against Io at Saturday night's main event, but it really feels like here that we are still working towards Rhea winning the world title back from Liv at some point.
Yeah, this didn't do any favors for me as far as making me believe Io Sky was going to be the
Yeah.
one to dethrone Liv. I thought the main event, I just don't think it was necessary to have this main event at this point. Um, I guess you wanted to get a Raquel loss out of the way before she maybe eventually wins the Intercontinental Championship, and that's why they wanted to shoehorn in this
Yeah.
match. But this match already kind of felt rushed in the main event. It kind of
Mm,
felt like they were running low on time. But it was good. It was good action. And uh, yeah, I just don't think it was necessary as far as even if you wanted to get this match out of the way before Raquel wins, and
mm,
that way it kind of erases the loss. I don't think you want Raquel losing like this at this point in
yeah.
time, but fun match. And yeah, it does, it makes it seem kind of lackluster, I guess, this Raw women's division. I hope that uh come 2025 in Netflix that they get some more stars uh on the Raw women's division. I assume Charlotte Flair was looming somewhere
Ooh,
because it's WrestleMania season, and
it
she's just
is.
peering and
We
ready
haven't
to
seen her
take
for a
either
while.
championship. So
Right.
we'll see. And I know people would probably be against that, but she is a star, and I do think she would inject some fuel into this women's division on Raw.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I know we got Rhea and Charlotte for the NXT Championship at that pandemic WrestleMania. Did we have another Rhea Charlotte WrestleMania?
Yeah, 39.
Okay. Okay, yes. And it
That
was
was the one before Sammy and Kevin and the Usos, where they basically had their main event match, but they weren't the main event. So it was a
got
pretty
it.
good match. It was good stuff.
Because I was wondering, I was like, is that the direction for WrestleMania? But they're not going to do that for a third
I
time.
don't think so. And also, I just remembered that you could also bring in Becky at some point. Like I'm
Yes.
sure Becky will be in that main event picture as well. So there's stars that can jump into the fray. We still don't know, like, I don't know what's going on with Alexa Bliss. Like, I don't know if she'll ever come back to the ring. It
I think
seems
she's
like
going to
she
be
might
involved
be.
in the Wyatt stuff.
I would think so too, but at this point, and we should get into that next because what in the world are they doing?
Yeah, I
but
mean, yeah, let's just real
yeah,
quick before we do that, I do want to mention that I thought it's shocking that they had Raquel lose in her first one-on-one match since returning. I think this would have done a lot more to develop the story if Raquel had picked up the win over Rhea through heel shenanigans. So that is the direction I would have gone in. That is not the direction they went. So shocking to have Raquel lose here, but as you mentioned, she's in that Intercontinental Championship tournament, which we also saw Lyra Valkyria advance in the triple threat on this episode of Monday Night Raw. So I think I think the betting favorite is for those two to probably be up against each other in the finals. And I agree with you. It looks looking like Raquel will win that. So if this is what they like you said, if they need to just get a Raquel loss out of the way, fine. Not what I would have done. But moving on to the Final Testament and the Wyatt family stuff here. This has been a story been going on for a while now, and man, this the ball has officially been dropped with the Wyatt family. Um, really, so they had it was a carrying cross and the Final Testament with the Miz versus the Wyatt family in a tag match. And in the end, we saw the return of Paul Ellering, who threw some Mr. Fuji powder into the face of Bo Dallas. And Karen Cross hit the final prayer, which I think is the first time I've ever seen his finish on television. And it picked up the win. What do you know? The Final Testament wins here. And man, momentum has been derailed with this Wyatt family. What are your thoughts?
yeah, this was pretty baffling. I will say, and that's the thing about the Wyatt Sicks. Even though they've kind of had a rocky few months, when they came out here, the crowd enjoys them, and whenever they're
Yeah,
in front of a crowd, like people do like the Wyatt Sicks. And that's why it was just so baffling to me. And this is the problem with, I think, why the Wyatt Sicks, and also like throughout Bray Wyatt's career, ironically, the big issue was that you would have these supernatural characters, you would debut them, and it was almost like they couldn't lose. Like if they
yeah,
lose, then it totally ruins their credibility. It happened with the Fiend. Like it felt like as soon as he had that match with Seth Rollins, even though he didn't technically lose, it was
yeah.
just
He was
so awful.
disqualified.
It was like disqualified in Hell in a Cell. It was awful. And then eventually he just loses to Goldberg in the next year after winning the championship, which was also just baffling.
Atrocious.
It was it just felt like it derailed the momentum the feed had coming in.
Yeah,
So similarly with the Wyatt Six, them losing and to all teams, the Final Testament, who are just like, I mean, they've been entertaining the past few weeks, but over this year, just not like
yeah.
anywhere near like lower mid card, mostly a mid card team. And they're the ones I know Paul Ellering makes his return, which I thought also was unnecessary. Like you could have, they wrote him off perfectly. Why do you have to bring him back?
Yeah.
Seems a little odd.
Let the man enjoy retirement.
And also pinning Uncle Howdy too. Like
Yeah,
they have three other guys you could pin, and they
yeah,
decided to pin the main guy. It just that felt a little bizarre. I assume the Wyatt Six will get their win back at some
for
point, but
sure.
it just it does not feel like uh I'm just gonna say I don't care. I just don't care,
Yeah.
and that sucks because when the Wyatt Six debuted, I really wanted to care, and now we're at the end of 2024, and I just simply don't care.
Yeah, this and the whole involvement with the Miz, like I guess they like done it a good enough job like explaining it away, but it's just still a weird pairing the Miz with the Final Testament. Like it's just what are we doing here? Um yeah, I'm not into this program at all. I think Karrion Cross is okay on his own. Um if he's booked correctly and he's not booked to lose every match, I think him as a character and as just as an imposing heel monster heel works. But this whole program is played out to me, and yeah, I've said it really since the beginning of this stuff. Like they need to figure out what makes them different because it's felt like Bray Wyatt cosplay since the very beginning, and I get that that's kind of the intention, but Bray Wyatt had his issues and you're seeing them now with the same when you're doing the same thing. So they got to figure out a way to course correct here because if not, like this is getting close to drawing dead in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just weird because they had a perfect way to kind of wrap up this Final Testament Wyatt Six stuff for them to go on their different ways, but now we're going to see more of it, and I really just feel like it should have ended tonight or last night.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like, what were the
it's bizarre.
creative pitches when they were like, "All right, we're gonna debut the new Wyatt Six, and you're gonna feud with Chad Gable, an American made for 3 months, and then for another 3 months, you're gonna feud with Carey and Cross." Like that was their big creative idea. It
You're giving them too much credit. They did not even think that far. They're like, we're
Yeah,
gonna make them debut, and then one writer was like, well, then what happens? And they're like, ah, look at this guy. If this guy's funny, and then
yeah,
he's probably fired the next day.
hmm
So like that, I think they just debuted him and literally had no idea where they were going next. Like I doubt they like I think they debuted him and were like, oh wait, we don't have like a good
yeah,
mid card right now, or we don't even have a good enough main event or an open enough main event scene to pick one of these guys for them to feud with.
yeah.
So I think it's just like a nice tribute act at this point that if people who do miss Bray Wyatt or miss that kind of style on their show, they can get their fill with the Wyatt Six, but ultimately it's not going to be at the level that Bray Wyatt was.
No,
And it's unfortunate, but I get it, I guess.
I think they could benefit by having Bo Dallas be Bo Dallas more and treat the whole Uncle Howdy thing, which is what I think they should have done from the beginning. Treat the whole Uncle Howdy gimmick in the same vein that Finn Balor used to treat the Demon or Bray Wyatt used to treat the Fiend, where like every week where he's just Uncle Howdy doesn't do anything for me and it loses its return. I think you bring out the alter ego in big moments and for big matches, and I think that's how you could save this.
100%. Yeah, and it seemed like they were going that route when they first debuted.
Yeah.
But then they've kind of dropped the ball on that recently where they've just made him more consistently Uncle Howdy than Bo Dallas. So, yeah.
And then the last thing on the show that we want to talk about is the follow up to the whole New Day angle. Obviously, last week was a historic episode where Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston turn on Big E. Kind of just not too much development on this week's episode. They hijacked Stu, the cameraman's camera, and they kind of just explained themselves to the crowd here. And boy, did they get heat. They got the Dom Mysterio treatment on the mic. Never thought I'd see the day where a crowd full of people would be booing Kofi Kingston, but here we are in 2024, and I think this is necessary for the New Day to make them interesting, to give them a new fresh coat of paint, to as we like to say, give them a new direction, all the possibilities. I think your speculation from a couple weeks ago about them feuding with the Wyatt Six coming up is right on the money. Um, I mean, not a ton to talk about in my opinion here, but certainly I kind of feel like they did drop the ball a little bit after such a hot angle to kind of just come out and like barely cut a promo. Like, feel like they could have done it more.
I didn't mind it because we have Saturday night's main event coming up. I feel like that's their priority, and if they're not doing anything,
Yeah.
it might fall in the background of them trying to start a storyline this week. And if their next direction is the Wyatt Six, then they need to wrap it up. That's why I felt so weird about this result
Hmm.
because it clearly means they're not done the final testament of Wyatt Six when they could have wrapped up and then immediately next week
Hmm.
started pushing that. But when they came out here and they got booed out of the building and they were just so awesome about doubling down on the Big E stuff. Uh, and they're like, we could have hit him with a chair. Like, why are you guys booing us? Like, 10 years of positivity, in
Yeah.
one day ruins it for you. It's almost like now I'm like, this is too good for the Wyatt Six stuff. Like, the Wyatt
Yes.
Six stuff would just be like,
Drag it down.
yeah, it would be like a less than a mid card feud. And I think these guys could honestly, if they wanted to, inject themselves into a main event picture. If you
Yeah.
want to have one of these guys like face, I know Gunther's a heel, so that's probably not the best example. But if there was like a face out there that's a high level, like even like a Sami Zayn down
Hmm.
the line, like I don't know. They're so good as heels, I feel like. And I am glad they did this segment to kind of establish like, all right, these are our new
Full
this is our
fledged
new
heels.
top heel
Yeah.
tag team out there. And it just sucks that also the tag champions are heels. So like they
Yeah.
can't necessarily go that route. But maybe they do like a multi-man tag and they're in it and they win the titles that way. I
Yeah.
do think it's either they win the titles as heels or they invade the main event scene. I know it's probably more likely that they go the direction of the Wyatt Six,
Mhm.
but I feel like it's more intriguing to put them somewhere that's more compelling and
I
that
don't
they could
know.
really flex their muscles with
Yeah.
their character work.
Given how little they're doing with Finn and JD as the tag champions, I don't know how you don't look at this reaction and not immediately put the tag titles on them because they're the most interesting tag team in the division. This is a hot new angle, and the tag champs aren't doing anything. So I would not be shocked if the New Day are the World Tag Team Champions as soon as the next episode of Raw. And I think if I had to guess, it's going to happen on the January Netflix debut.
Yeah, I mean they got a lot of stuff they got going on for the January Netflix debut. I feel like a lot of title changes, or I assume the I don't know if they have this announced yet, but I assume the Intercontinental Championship women's thing is
Yeah,
going to be the debut of Netflix. They'll probably have a world title match. They're going to have a lot for that episode, so maybe they don't necessarily have to put it on there because then it
mhm,
kind of get lost in the shuffle. Like I could see that being like a main event of a future episode in the Netflix era. Like they could
yeah,
use that tag team match to like on the debut episode to kind of promote next week so that people who are just starting to watch on Netflix decide, oh, I want to keep tuning in because
right.
this New Day thing is pretty cool. But yeah, I think it would be important to establish why people hate the New Day so much in 2025 and to 2024 on that first episode instead of just like because you're gonna have a lot of new viewers. So it'd be weird if you all these new viewers just saw this team that's seemingly very charismatic win
Right.
the tag titles and everyone's booing them. I think you want to have an episode that kind of introduces why they're such, bad guys for leaving E at the altar, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah.
And then the next coming weeks, you can do that. I can even see that because there is a Saturday night's main event before Royal Rumble. I could see
Hmm.
that being like a Saturday night's main event match next month.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it too. But some good stuff with the New Day here. Any final thoughts on this episode of Monday Night Raw?
Not on Raw. I think it was as a go home episode, it was kind of weak. Like
Yeah.
obviously they added some stuff to the match to try to make it interesting, but definitely didn't add a lot of hype to Saturday night's main event. I think the stuff that got me excited were stuff that is gonna play out in the next few weeks, leading into like the Netflix debut, the Royal Rumble, that kind of stuff. So yeah, weak go home episode, okay, Raw episode, but I'm fine with it because of how great last week's episode was.
I'm on the same page there. So, All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Monday Night Raw recap. Of course, tomorrow we will be releasing our Saturday night's main event prediction show. So stay tuned for that. Saturday night's main event shaping up to be a huge match, a huge card, as well as we have the Monday Night Raw debut on Netflix coming up for us to look forward to, all leading towards the Royal Rumble and the road to WrestleMania. So keep it locked right here on this channel because we got a lot of wrestling content coming up, a lot of big headlines coming your way, and a lot of big shows for us to talk about. So thank you so much for listening to us, and we will see you all next time.
Peace.